Welcome to the AI Checkpoints. Today we're taking a deep dive into, well, one of the most dynamic areas in AI right now. And let's be honest, maybe one of the most hyped too. We're talking about AI agents inside businesses in the enterprise. You've definitely heard the buzz, I'm sure, seen the big promises about AI, completely changing how companies operate. But what does that really look like? When these sophisticated AI systems actually move from being cool prototypes to like everyday tools in a real business.
Exactly. And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We want to unpack what it actually takes. How do you build reliable, genuinely productive AI agents within big organizations? How do you get past that toy chatbot stage? So we've pulled together insights from some real leaders in this space, people like Harrison Chase from LangChain and LangGraph, Jerry Liu from LlamaIndex, Joel Hahn, who's CTO at Thomson Reuters, Donald Hruska from Retool. Their views taken together give us a pretty practical roadmap, you see, for understanding the key ingredients, the strategies you really need to think about.
Right. And it matters, really matters to you listening. Whether you're maybe a business leader trying to figure out how to use AI, get that edge, or perhaps you're a developer actually building these things, wrestling with these new tools. Or maybe you're just curious about, what's next in automation. We're going to try and cut through some of that hype today, show you what's actually working, what the real challenges are, and what's genuinely possible right now. Okay, so with that sort of foundation laid, let's dive a bit deeper into this future vision. Harrison Chase at LangChain, he paints this picture, right? Where businesses have lots of specialized agents just running, handling different tasks. And humans. We become more like supervisors, orchestrators, guiding the agents. It sounds like a pretty big shift from how you normally think about workflows, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a fundamental reimagining. And to really get a grip on what makes an agent work in that kind of complex setting, Harrison offers this really clear first principles way to think about it. He basically suggests you evaluate an agent like this, take the value you get when it's right, multiply that by the probability it is right, and then divide all of that by the cost if it messes up, if it's wrong. That final number, he argues, has to be bigger than what it actually costs you just to run the agent itself. It gives you a clear, almost quantitative framework for deciding, okay, is this agent actually worth deploying?
It makes a lot of sense, a clear equation. But what does that value really mean in practice? I mean, beyond just making things a bit quicker or easier, where's the real business ROI? What makes an agent truly indispensable?
Yeah, good question. So to boost that value and right factor, you really need to aim at genuinely high-value problems. Think about areas like complex legal work. You've got companies like Harvey making strides there, or finance using agents for deep research, summarization. These are fields where businesses already pay a lot, for human experts. That high cost signals inherent value in the task itself. So the work these agents are doing isn't just like a minor convenience. It's tackling critical, often really expensive processes.
Right, understood. So it's about impact, focusing on the big stuff, not just automating minor things. But does the way we interact with the agent matter too? Like how long it works, how deep it goes, does that change the value?
It definitely does. That's another key way to increase value. By changing the interaction pattern. If you think about early AI, especially things like RX systems, that's retrieval augmented generation, they mostly focused on giving you quick answers, right? Like a 5-second response from a knowledge base. But now we're seeing this really strong trend towards what people are calling deep research agents or ambient agents. These things run for longer periods, maybe hours even, doing really substantial, complex work. Think about advanced coding tools like Cursor or Windsurf. They're not just giving you snippets, they're involved in the whole development flow. This lets agents do much more significant integrated work, which dramatically boosts their overall value.
Okay, so finding that high value is one part. But then there's making them reliable. That seems critical. It's one thing to have a cool demo, a prototype that works sometimes. But getting to a production agent that a business can actually trust day in, day out, that sounds like a big hurdle. How do we improve that reliability?
It is a critical point, yeah, especially for enterprise use. So one key strategy is moving away from just prompting a large language model, an LLM. Because, look, an LLM might follow your prompt correctly 90% of the time. But that other 10%, that uncertainty, it can be way too risky for important business stuff. So you're seeing frameworks like LangGraph emerge. They emphasize this idea of workflows and agents. It lets developers define more predictable steps, like ensuring agent A always calls agent B in certain situations. It brings much needed control, predictability, especially when you have multiple agents working together. It's like building a solid skeleton around the LLM's flexibility.
That makes sense, using structure for predictability.
Yeah.
But even with that structure, how do you prove it works? How do you convince, say, skeptical managers or stakeholders that this AI agent is actually doing what it's supposed to reliably, especially with that sort of black box feeling AI can sometimes have?
Yeah, transparency. That's where observability and evaluation tools are just invaluable. Things like Langsmith, for example. They let developers, and importantly business folks too, see every single step the agent takes. It just cuts down the uncertainty massively. You can literally point and say, look, the agent made 3 LLM calls here, then 5 here, showing it's actually reasoning through steps, not just guessing. Harrison Chase shared this great little story. A user actually got approval to deploy an agent by walking the review panel through its steps using Langsmith, showed them everything. Apparently, they finished the meeting early, which, almost never happens in those kinds of reviews.
Huh. That's a fantastic example. It really shows how demonstrating performance, being transparent, builds that essential trust. And you absolutely need that confidence for enterprise adoption, especially for anything high stakes.
Indeed. And that leads nicely into dealing with the other side of Harrison's equation, the cost when wrong. There's often this maybe sometimes outsized fear about agents, worries about them going wild, causing unintended problems, damaging the brand or the business.
Yeah.
And you have to actively manage that perception, that risk.
So how do you tackle that fear? How do you really minimize the potential damage if an agent does make a mistake in a live setting?
Well, one really powerful technique is making agent actions easily reversible. Think about software development again. If an agent writes code, tools like, say, Replit can save changes as commits. So it's super easy to just roll back to a previous version that worked. That's actually why code generation is such a good fit for agents early on. That built-in version control fundamentally changes the risk calculation. If you can always undo an error easily, the cost of that error drops dramatically. And the second strategy, maybe the most impactful, is really embedding human-in-the-loop patterns, HITL. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Instead of the agent just making changes directly, you deliberately put humans at key points. So maybe the agent writes a report, but a human has to review and approve it before it goes out. Or for code, the agent opens a pull request that's like a proposed change for a developer to review instead of just pushing code live. It puts humans in control, acting as essential guardrails. And there are other HITL patterns too, like calibration. You can design agents to ask clarifying questions right at the start. We see this with tools like Deep Research or Claude Code. This little back and forth helps make sure the agent really understands what the user wants, which cuts down errors later. And then there's post-run correction. Features like a time travel, where if something goes wrong mid-process, you can rewind to that step, fix it, and rerun from there. You combine these patterns, and it really, really changes the risk profile of using these agents.
That definitely helps with the going wild worry. But AI systems are still often non-deterministic, right? They don't always give the exact same answer. Joel Aruan from Thomson Reuters mentioned something fascinating. They found even their expert human evaluators had like 10% variability judging the same thing just a week apart. So how do you truly trust a system that isn't perfectly predictable, even with humans in the loop? What's the right balance of human oversight, especially when the stakes are high?
That's a really crucial question, especially for companies in regulated fields like law or tax, like Thomson Reuters. Their approach is interesting. They do create really rigorous rubrics for evaluating agent output. That's essential. But ultimately, their main guide, their sort of North Star for getting better, is user preference. They definitely use deep expert knowledge to build guardrails and ensure factual accuracy, of course. But whether a user actually finds the agent's output helpful, trustworthy, useful in their workflow, that subjective element is what really drives improvement. It kind of acknowledges that, look, even humans aren't perfectly consistent. So the focus shifts to continuous improvement, guided by user satisfaction, but always within those defined safety boundaries.
I see. So it's less about chasing some impossible perfect score and more about solid processes, expert input, and tuning the human oversight based on real-world usefulness. That feels very practical. Okay, we've covered the core ideas, risk, trust. Let's get really practical now. How are companies actually building these different kinds of agents? How are they deploying them?
Right. So Jerry Liu from LlamaIndex draws a useful distinction between two main types emerging: assistive agents and automation agents. Assistive agents are kind of like advanced chatbots or ARG systems. They help humans find info faster. They're usually chat-based, and they tend to have more human involvement, more HITL. Think enhanced enterprise search. Automation agents, though, are different. They often run in the background, handling routine tasks, maybe multi-step processes from end to end. They're usually more constrained in what they do, have less step-by-step human checking, maybe more like a final review at the end of a batch process. Examples might be reconciling invoices or maybe automatically pulling data from technical spec sheets into a database. And interestingly, these automation agents can sometimes act as a backend, structuring data that then feeds into an assistive agent for a nicer user interface. Joel's Ron adds another layer to this. He sees agentic AI more as a spectrum, not just two boxes. He talks about having dials or levers you can adjust. Things like autonomy, how much can it do on its own? Context, what information can it access? Memory, does it remember past interactions? And coordination, can it work with other agents? So you might dial up autonomy for a low-risk task, but keep it low for something critical. You dial up context if it needs broad knowledge, dial it down if it should only use specific data. The key is tuning these dials based on the specific job and the level of risk you or your users are comfortable with.
That's a really flexible way to think about it, tailoring the AI's power. And what you mentioned earlier about Thomson Reuters,
Yeah.
it's fascinating how they're using old systems as assets here. That seems counterintuitive sometimes.
It really is a smart move. Joel Cron emphasized that their legacy systems, built over decades with really deep domain logic, aren't burdens, they're unique strategic advantages. So instead of ripping everything out and starting over for every AI project, they've cleverly broken down their existing engines for tax, for legal research into modular tools. And now their AI agents can use these tools. So for tax returns, the AI might extract data from a document, but then it intelligently passes that data to their existing, highly validated tax calculation engine to apply complex rules. It's leveraging decades of work. Same for legal research agents, use existing components to find documents, fetch them, compare citations, things these systems already do really well. It just breathes new life into that established logic.
That's a huge insight. Don't just build new, augment your existing strengths. Which brings us right to that big strategic question, build versus buy, especially after that initial phase of, vibe coding where it seemed like anyone could whip up an agent. How should companies realistically approach this choice now?
Yeah, the vibe coding honeymoon is maybe over a bit. Donald Hriska from Retool lays out roughly 4 main options. 1, build it all from scratch, total control, but a massive effort. Needs serious in-house AI talent. 2, use frameworks like LangGraph, good balance of control and flexibility, still a decent amount of work, a medium lift. 3, use agent platforms like Retool itself. These give you more pre-built components, handle a lot of the infrastructure, have connectors ready to go, built-in observability, much faster to get something working. Great for that long tail of different business needs, lower lift. And 4, verticalized agents. These are pre-built for one very specific task, super easy to deploy for that task, but zero flexibility beyond it. So the choice really comes down to trade-offs. Is this agent part of your core product? Your competitive advantage? You'll probably lean towards building it yourself or maybe using a framework for control. Dealing with super sensitive data, again, maybe build or use a framework where you control everything. But if it's more of a standard business workflow, something you need running quickly, a platform often makes way more sense. Faster time to value, less engineering headache. But Donald really stressed, whichever way you go, observability is non-negotiable. You have to know how much it's costing in tokens and inference compute. You need runtime info. You've got to track what your agents are doing, how well they're doing it, and crucially, how much they're costing.
Right. Okay, so we've gone through the principles, building trust, the different ways to build and deploy. What does this all add up to? What's the bigger picture here? What's the broader impact of these AI agents likely to be on businesses, maybe even society?
Well, connecting the dots, it seems pretty clear that these agents, especially the ambient ones, are how AI value is really going to scale across an organization. Remember, ambient agents get triggered by events, they work in the background. This enables a sort of one-to-many interaction. One person can oversee and get value from potentially hundreds of agents. That's way more scalable than just one person chatting with one bot at a time. It really amplifies the impact and the economics. They're lining up too. You've got massive growth in AI spending. Anthropic reportedly tripled revenue in just 5 months. That's huge. But at the same time, the actual cost of running the AI, the inference cost, is plummeting. Like a 99.7% drop in cost per token from 2022 to 2024. Incredible. So they're getting more powerful and much cheaper to run at scale. And we're already seeing results. Companies like ClickUp saving hundreds of thousands on vendor costs, avoiding headcount, Descript automating hundreds of work hours every week. It's real.
Wow. That's genuinely transformative potential, way beyond just automating tasks.
Exactly. It's not just about automation. It's about freeing up human potential. Donald Herska made this great analogy to the printing press. It didn't kill off knowledge, it democratized it, right?
Right.
Led to an explosion of learning innovation. AI agents could be similar, not just replacing human effort, but enhancing our capabilities, freeing us up from the routine, the cognitive drudgery, letting people focus on more creative, strategic, uniquely human work. And ultimately, that could genuinely increase the overall economic output, the GDP of the world. And, searches for AI agents on Google are up 11 times in just over a year. So people are definitely paying attention. You're going to keep hearing about this.
That is a really profound thought to end on. It reframes it, doesn't it? It's not just about what the machines can do, but what they enable us to do differently. A new kind of collaboration. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
And maybe a final thought for you to mull over. As these AI agents get more capable, the really key question isn't just what they can do on their own. It's how can you best weave their abilities together with human intelligence? How do you turn them from just tools into real collaborative partners? Think about it. What unique assets, what knowledge, what processes do you have in your work or your organization that could be unlocked, amplified by this kind of agentic AI?
A fantastic question to consider. We definitely encourage you to continue your own deep dives and keep exploring this really fascinating, fast-moving world.